How's it going, everyone? My name is Ryan Holsapple. Welcome to Transformational Psychology. Today, I want to talk to you about some of the principles of change, and specifically intentional change, because change is something that we have to withstand regardless of whether or not we want to. Change is always happening. In fact, it's one of the only things that we can depend on, to be cliche. But the principles of intentional change are different, right? Because these are changes that we want to co create with the world. There's a great prayer that is used in 12-step programs that goes, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. See, in that prayer, we have all the elements of change and discernment, the wisdom to know what we have control over and what we don't. And so often, this is a discerning factor that people fail to apprehend. They become obsessed with narratives of unlimited potential, wherein you can basically become anything you want to, anything you put your mind to, you can do it. And this is a fairly innocuous ambition when you think about it. It's just somebody's trying to be all they can be. But this seemingly harmless proposition ends up being harmful because it's not reality. The reality of life is that we have a capacity that is embodied through our psychophysiological makeup, whether that be through our personality traits or through our talents and our characteristics and our likes and dislikes, our passions and our interests, right? You wouldn't want to be anything you could be. You'd want to be who you are. You'd want to be something that feels good to you. And it's futile to compare ourselves to others on the basis that every human being is absolutely unique and has different gifts, capacities, learning edges, and life issues that come with their particular package. So when we're talking about change, the first thing is discerning who is it that I am and what is it that I want within my capacity for expression. And that sounds a lot less immediately appealing than become anything you want, have infinite potential, which is something that you'll hear in self-help circles all too often, in my opinion. But in the long term, the message of sustainable growth and individual uniqueness is actually a lot more hopeful. There's a myth of Icarus who flies too close to the sun. It's a Greek myth. He flies too close to the sun, and guess what? He gets burned. And guess what happens? He comes crashing back down to Earth and into the ocean. And this is a great analogy for those of us who have a hard time setting goals within our particular capacity and try to bite off more than we can chew. And in our hubris and our ignorance, we end up crashing and burning. There's also the Promethean myth, where Prometheus tries to steal the fires from the gods and he gets punished by Zeus. So there is a beautiful lesson in these myths about the importance of sustainable growth into our authentic selves and to not bite off more than we can chew, but actually aim for a target that we can hit, as Professor Jordan Peterson often shares. And I think that that is such a beautiful and important message to embody in our culture that tends to cling on to fallacies of infinite growth. And so with change, once we do some self-inquiry and find out who we are and what we're good at, what we like to do, what we prefer to do, then we have a lot of options, actually. And one of the Kierkegaardian insights is that when we have too many options, we tend to be paralyzed by analysis, right? We don't do anything. And so Kierkegaard's thing was, from my understanding, make a choice, make a leap of faith, just do something. And I am adding an addendum to that, in that do something that fits you. And so, in order to change for the better over a long-term trajectory of growth, it's really important that we take the time to understand our personality. And I'll often talk on this podcast about the genetic research, which lays out the differences between people within given social groups and how important those differences are when it comes to our dispositional traits that go on to develop more and more with environmental interactions and become distinct subpersonalities. It's important to understand these things. And once we understand who we are through different methods of self-inquiry, I like to identify the subpersonalities through the self-soul-spirit approach that you can find on this podcast. Once we know who we are, then we actually have more freedom of choice. So the irony is, once we hone in on our capacities in our unique range of being, which is distinct from others, then we have the opportunity to actually take personal responsibility and make choices. And so then I would just advocate that the next step is that we then make those choices in the most mindful way possible, and we set achievable goals so that we can slowly, incrementally work towards them. And that we have this image of our potential best selves. So it's an imaginal process. I'll often ask people to imagine the person that they feel they could become. A soul image. You can feel it. You close your eyes and just imagine yourself in that mode of being, walking through the world, confident, or articulate, competent, whatever it is that you're doing or how it is that you're being. Create a distinct, empowered image of that and create a relationship to that image, because image calls us forth into being in very special and psychodramatic ways that it elicits a response from our body and from our souls and from our hearts. And so I encourage people to use their imagination when they're in any process of change. And you can apply what I'm saying here to virtually any goal that someone wants to achieve. But anyways, I hope that this was a helpful analysis. I actually have to go right now and go to a meeting, and I just wanted to do this short video. I will expand on this if you want me to. You can find my website in the description, and you can contact me there with questions that I can address in future podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe, like, hit the notification, follow, do whatever you want to do, and I will be tuning in again soon.